What if I told you the most powerful person in any room isn't the loudest, the richest, or the most strategic, but the most authentic? In a world obsessed with calculated impressions and strategic networking, one type of person possesses a magnetic charm that money can't buy and strategy can't fake. They walk into rooms and walls come down. They ask simple questions that unlock deep connections. They express genuine enthusiasm when others hide behind careful restraint. They are the naturals, and their authentic approach to life creates a ripple effect that transforms everyone around them. Today's story reveals how Lucy Reynolds, a seemingly ordinary art teacher, wielded this extraordinary power to break through the carefully constructed facade of investment banker Daniel, changing not just his perspective but his entire approach to success and connection. You'll discover the counterintuitive psychology that makes authenticity more powerful than strategy. How childlike enthusiasm creates deeper connections than sophisticated restraint. At the exact moments when dropping your social mask becomes your greatest strength. And why the courage to go first in vulnerability might be the most valuable skill in our performance-driven world. If you're new to story-driven English, welcome. We bring you compelling stories that not only entertain but embed advanced English vocabulary into your mind naturally and effortlessly. Our approach combines powerful storytelling with language learning to help you master English while exploring fascinating aspects of human psychology. The Natural's Charm. Chapter 1. A Perfect Afternoon. The summer sun bathed Central Park in a warm golden light as Lucy Reynolds spread her watercolor supplies across the picnic blanket. At 28, she possessed a quality that was increasingly rare in Manhattan. A genuine, unaffected enthusiasm that seemed impervious to the city's cynicism. Her honey-colored hair was gathered in a messy bun, with several escaped strands framing her face as she arranged her brushes with childlike concentration. Several passers-by smiled involuntarily at the sight of her. A young woman so obviously delighted by the simple act of preparing to paint in the park. There was something refreshingly unself-conscious about her movements, as if she'd forgotten she was in a public space entirely. "Is this spot taken?" asked a deep voice. Lucy looked up, squinting slightly in the sunlight. A man in his early 30s stood beside her blanket, gesturing to the empty grass nearby. He wore a crisp button-down shirt and carried a leather messenger bag that screamed corporate professional, though his tie had been removed and his sleeves were rolled up in a concession to the summer heat. "Not at all," Lucy replied with a bright smile. "There's plenty of park for everyone." The man settled himself on the grass about 10 feet away, pulling out a laptop and what appeared to be financial reports. For several minutes, Lucy forgot about him entirely as she became absorbed in sketching the outline of the lake and the people lounging around it. It wasn't until she heard an exasperated sigh that she looked over again. The man was frowning at his computer screen, his posture rigid with frustration. "Technology troubles?" Lucy asked sympathetically. The man glanced up, momentarily surprised by her interest. "Spreadsheet disasters," he corrected with a tight smile. "Nothing that would interest normal people." "Try me," Lucy challenged, setting down her paintbrush. "I'm surprisingly good with Excel for an art teacher." His eyebrows rose. "You teach art?" "To 6th graders," she nodded. "They're simultaneously the most creative and most destructive force in the universe." A genuine laugh escaped him, seeming to surprise even himself. "I'm Daniel," he offered. "Lucy," she replied. Now, what's your spreadsheet done to offend you? Over the next 15 minutes, Lucy abandoned her painting to sit cross-legged next to Daniel, peering at his screen as he explained the financial model he was trying to build. Despite having no background in finance, she asked questions with such genuine curiosity that Daniel found himself explaining concepts he normally would have glossed over. "That's fascinating," she said at one point, completely sincere. "It's like painting with numbers instead of colors." Daniel looked at her skeptically. "Most people would be asleep by now." "Most people don't really look at things," Lucy replied, shrugging. "They decide whether something is interesting before they actually explore it." Daniel studied her face, searching for the social performance he was accustomed to in his corporate world. The feigned interest, the strategic engagement. He found none. Lucy's interest was as transparent as her disappointment when her phone alarm suddenly chimed. "Oh no, I have to run. I'm meeting my sister for dinner across town." She quickly began gathering her art supplies, several brushes tumbling from her grasp in her haste. Daniel helped retrieve them. "Here, let me." "Thank you," Lucy said, accepting the brushes with a grateful smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. "It was nice meeting you, Daniel the spreadsheet wizard." "You too, Lucy the art teacher," he replied, surprised by how much he meant it. As she hurried away, paintbrushes sticking haphazardly from her tote bag, Daniel realized she hadn't once asked what he did for a living, who he worked for, or any of the standard New York networking questions. Their entire interaction had been refreshingly purposeless. Back at his apartment that evening, Daniel found himself thinking about Lucy's approach to their conversation. In his world of investment banking, every interaction was calculated, every interest strategic. Lucy's unguarded enthusiasm and lack of social agenda had been like stepping into a different reality, one with significantly less armor required. He glanced at his phone, realizing she hadn't asked for his number either. The thought was oddly disappointing. Chapter 2. The Gallery Opening. 2 weeks later, Daniel stood in a crowded Soho gallery, nursing a glass of mediocre white wine. His firm represented several of the gallery's investors, and attendance at such events was an unwritten professional obligation. He nodded at several acquaintances, participating in the practiced small talk that characterized these gatherings. "What do you think of the exhibition?" asked a fellow banker, gesturing vaguely at the abstract paintings that covered the walls. "Compelling use of negative space," Daniel replied, using one of his standard art opening phrases that committed to nothing while sounding vaguely knowledgeable. His colleague nodded sagely, clearly not wanting to reveal his own artistic ignorance. Daniel suppressed a sigh. These conversations followed such predictable patterns that he sometimes felt he could navigate them in his sleep. "Oh, but you have to look at it from over here." The enthusiastic voice cut through the murmur of the crowd, drawing Daniel's attention to a small group gathered in front of one of the larger canvases. In the center stood Lucy, her hands animatedly describing something about the painting's perspective. "See how the lines converge if you stand right here?" she was saying, physically positioning an elderly gentleman to a specific spot. "The artist is playing with our perception. It's like a magic trick with paint." The elderly man's face transformed with delight as he saw whatever effect Lucy was describing. "Well, I'll be damned," he chuckled. "I would have walked right past it." Daniel found himself drifting toward the group, drawn by Lucy's animated explanation. She wore a vintage dress that somehow managed to look both elegant and slightly askew, as if she'd been twirling shortly before arriving. Her hair was down tonight, falling in natural waves around her shoulders. When she spotted Daniel, her face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Spreadsheet wizard!" she exclaimed, as if encountering an old friend. "Come see this optical illusion." Without waiting for his response, she reached for his arm and pulled him to the specific viewing spot. "Look at how the horizon line shifts when you stand exactly here." Daniel obediently looked at the painting, but found himself more intrigued by Lucy's unabashed enthusiasm than the artwork itself. While everyone else in the gallery maintained a studied air of sophisticated appraisal, Lucy responded to the art with open delight, surprise, and occasionally comical confusion. "That one completely baffles me," she confided to Daniel, pointing to a particularly abstract piece. "I've been staring at it for 10 minutes and I still can't decide if I'm looking at it upside down." Daniel laughed, feeling some of his practiced social persona beginning to slip. "Maybe that's the point?" "Maybe," Lucy agreed cheerfully. "Art is supposed to make you feel something, even if that feeling is bewildered." As the evening progressed, Daniel observed how people were drawn to Lucy despite, or perhaps because of, her lack of art-world sophistication. Her questions to the artists were direct and sometimes naively blunt, but asked with such genuine interest that even the most pretentious creators found themselves giving thoughtful answers rather than rehearsed statements. At one point, he overheard an exchange between Lucy and a notoriously difficult artist whose work commanded six-figure sums. "Why this shade of blue?" Lucy was asking, her head tilted in curiosity. "It feels sad, but not quite devastated. More like wistfully remembering something beautiful that's gone." The artist, who typically responded to questions with arch dismissals, looked at her with surprise. "That's exactly what I was trying to capture," he admitted. "It's the color of the sky on the day my mother died. Beautiful, but forever associated with loss." "Thank you for sharing that," Lucy said simply, touching his arm with natural compassion. Later, as the crowd began to thin, Daniel found himself helping Lucy collect her coat from the check room. "Are you here representing Reynolds Art Institute?" he asked, assuming she was connected to the event professionally. Lucy looked confused for a moment, then laughed. "Oh, no, nothing like that. My friend Zoe has a piece in the show, that small sculpture in the corner. I came to support her, but then got distracted by everything else. The art world is like a candy store for the eyes, don't you think?" Daniel found himself smiling at her description. "I've never thought of it quite that way." "How do you think of it?" she asked, genuinely interested. He hesitated, then admitted, "Honestly? Usually as a business obligation." Instead of the judgment he half expected, Lucy nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. When something becomes work, it's harder to see the wonder in it." Then she brightened. "But that just means you need a tour guide to point out all the exciting bits." As they stepped outside into the cool evening air, Daniel found himself reluctant to end their conversation. "Would you like to grab a coffee? Or dessert, perhaps?" Lucy's face fell. "I wish I could, but I promised to help Zoe celebrate tonight. Her sculpture already sold, which is huge for her first big show." "Of course," Daniel said, masking his disappointment. But I'd love to another time, Lucy added, with refreshing directness. She pulled a slightly crumpled receipt from her purse and scribbled her number on the back. Here. I'm terrible at checking my email, but I always answer my phone. Daniel accepted the makeshift business card, amused by its contrast to the sleek digital contact exchanges he was accustomed to. I'll call you, he promised. As he watched her hurry away to rejoin her friend, Daniel realized he was smiling. Not the careful, measured smile he deployed at professional events, but a genuine expression of pleasure. Lucy's unguarded approach to life was somehow both childlike and profound. In a city where calculated sophistication was the norm, her natural enthusiasm felt revolutionary. Chapter 3. The Bakery. The following Saturday morning found Daniel outside a small bakery in the West Village, checking the address Lucy had texted him. When he'd called her to suggest dinner at a trendy new restaurant, she'd counter-proposed what she called a pastry adventure. They only make these twice a month, she'd explained excitedly. The baker studied in Japan for years. Trust me, it's worth the early wake-up call. Now, at 7:30 a.m. on his day off, Daniel wondered what he'd gotten himself into. The bakery was tiny, with no sign beyond a simple logo etched on the window. He spotted Lucy waiting outside, bouncing slightly on her toes against the morning chill. "You made it," she greeted him, her breath visible in the cool air. "I was worried you might reconsider the ungodly hour." "I'm usually up by 6 anyway," Daniel admitted. Though typically with coffee and financial news rather than, "What exactly are we having?" "Shokupan milk bread with special seasonal fillings," Lucy said reverently. "It sounds simple, but it's like eating a cloud that somehow tastes like heaven." The small line began to move as the bakery opened its doors. Inside, the space was minimalist but warm, with the yeasty aroma of fresh bread permeating everything. Lucy chatted easily with the woman behind the counter, who clearly recognized her as a regular. "2 seasonal specials for me and my friend," Lucy requested. "He's a first-timer." The woman smiled knowingly. "Prepare to be converted," she told Daniel. They found a small table by the window, and Lucy watched expectantly as Daniel took his first bite of the bread. The texture was unlike anything he'd experienced, impossibly light yet substantial, while the delicate sweetness of the filling unfolded gradually on his palate. "This is..." he began, searching for an adequately sophisticated culinary description. "I know, right?" Lucy interrupted, her expression joyful. "Words fail. That's how you know it's truly exceptional." Daniel found himself laughing at her perfect encapsulation of his experience. "How did you discover this place?" "Got lost in the rain last fall and ducked in here to dry off," Lucy explained between bites. "Happy accidents are responsible for most of my favorite discoveries." "You don't research places beforehand?" Daniel asked, thinking of his own carefully vetted restaurant selections. Lucy shook her head. "Where's the fun in that? I like to be surprised." As they enjoyed their breakfast, Lucy asked about Daniel's work with genuine curiosity. Unlike his usual carefully edited explanations designed to either impress or simplify, Daniel found himself explaining the actual challenges and satisfactions of his role in investment banking. Lucy listened attentively, asking questions that showed she was truly trying to understand his world rather than assess its status value. So you help companies figure out if they're making smart choices with their money? She summarized at one point. That's a refreshingly straightforward way of putting it, Daniel acknowledged. Though my firm would prefer providing strategic financial guidance to optimize capital allocation. Lucy wrinkled her nose. That's a lot of words to say the same thing. After breakfast, Lucy suggested a walk through the neighborhood. What should have been a 30-minute stroll stretched into 3 hours as Lucy approached the familiar streets with the curiosity of an explorer. She pointed out architectural details Daniel had never noticed despite passing similar buildings daily, discovered a tiny bookshop hidden between two larger stores, and convinced a street musician to let Daniel try playing his unusual handmade instrument. You have to feel the vibration here, she explained, guiding his hand to the correct position with unself-conscious ease. It's like the instrument is having a conversation with you. Daniel, who hadn't played any instrument since reluctant piano lessons as a child, found himself producing a surprisingly melodic sound under her encouragement. Not bad for a numbers guy, the musician acknowledged with a nod. Throughout the morning, Daniel observed how Lucy's natural enthusiasm seemed to elicit similar responses from others. The normally reserved bookshop owner happily showed them his collection of first editions. A woman walking her dog ended up in a 10-minute conversation about canine personalities. Even a typically stoic food cart vendor smiled as Lucy complimented his falafel technique. Do you know everyone in this neighborhood? Daniel asked eventually. Lucy looked surprised by the question. No, most of these people are new to me. But you interact with them like old friends. She considered this. I guess I just assume people are interesting until proven otherwise. Most don't disappoint. By early afternoon, when they finally parted ways, Daniel realized he had experienced more of New York in a few hours with Lucy than he had in months of his usual routines. More surprisingly, he had revealed more about himself, his actual thoughts and feelings, not his carefully curated professional persona, than he had to anyone in recent memory. Walking home, he reflected on Lucy's approach to life. Her enthusiasm wasn't naivety, as he had initially assumed. There was a wisdom in her openness, a choice to engage with the world directly rather than through layers of social calculation. His phone buzzed with a text from Lucy. Thanks for the adventure. Next time I want to hear more about that summer you spent building boats in Maine. That story deserves proper time. Daniel smiled, remembering how he'd mentioned that teenage experience in passing. Most people would have glossed over such a detail in favor of his more impressive professional accomplishments. Lucy, characteristically, had honed in on what had genuinely interested her. He texted back, "Only if you explain how you ended up teaching art when you studied ethnomusicology." Her reply came quickly. "Deal." It involves a wrong turn, a flooded basement, and an accidental display of finger painting talent. All my best stories start with mistakes. Chapter 4. The Competition. Over the following weeks, Daniel found himself spending more time with Lucy, drawn to her refreshing perspective and genuine interest in the world. Their outings were rarely conventional. Instead of trendy restaurants, Lucy preferred hidden ethnic eateries discovered on her wanderings. Rather than Broadway shows, she suggested experimental theater in converted warehouses or impromptu concerts in community gardens. Through it all, Daniel observed how Lucy's natural charm operated in the world. Unlike the calculated charisma he encountered in business settings, Her appeal stemmed from genuine enthusiasm and an unusual ability to be fully present in each moment. She approached new experiences with the openness of a child while processing them with the depth of a philosopher. Their relationship remained in the ambiguous territory between friendship and romance, with Daniel hesitant to disrupt the easy connection they had established. There was something uniquely valuable about Lucy's presence in his otherwise strategic life. A reminder that not every interaction needed to advance an agenda. This comfortable pattern was interrupted when Daniel invited Lucy to his firm's annual charity auction. The event was a significant networking opportunity disguised as philanthropy, where the city's financial elite bid extravagantly on luxury items to benefit various causes while cementing business relationships. "Fair warning," Daniel told her as they entered the elegantly decorated hotel ballroom. "This crowd can be rather calculated." Lucy wore a vintage emerald dress that looked simultaneously elegant and slightly eccentric, her usual messy bun adorned with a small silk flower. "People are just people," she replied with a shrug. "No matter how expensive their watches." Daniel soon realized he had underestimated both the effect Lucy would have on the gathering and his own reaction to seeing her navigate his professional world. Within an hour, Lucy had somehow charmed the notoriously difficult managing partner of a rival firm, coaxed a genuine laugh from the perpetually serious head of compliance, and engaged the shy spouse of a major client in an animated conversation about urban beekeeping. "Your friend is quite unusual," commented Jonathan Pierce, one of Daniel's colleagues, as they watched Lucy enthusiastically examining a sculptural piece up for auction while chatting with its creator. "How so?" Daniel asked, instantly defensive. "She seems genuinely interested in everyone she meets," Jonathan said. "It's refreshing, if somewhat suspicious." "Why suspicious?" Jonathan raised an eyebrow. "Because everyone here has an angle, Daniel. The question is, what's hers? Not everyone approaches life as a series of transactions," Daniel replied stiffly. "If you believe that, investment banking might be the wrong career for you," Jonathan laughed, clapping him on the shoulder before moving away to greet a potential client. Daniel felt a surge of irritation, both at Jonathan's cynicism and at the uncomfortable recognition that until recently, he would have shared that perspective. Lucy's unguarded enthusiasm would indeed have struck his former self as either naive or strategically disguised. His thoughts were interrupted when he noticed Lucy now engaged in conversation with Sophia Renwick, the elegant founder of a successful hedge fund who was known for her razor-sharp assessments of both markets and people. To Daniel's surprise, the usually reserved Sophia was laughing openly at something Lucy had said. As he approached, he caught the end of their exchange. "So there I was, covered in blue paint, trying to convince 36th graders that this was a planned demonstration of abstract expressionism rather than me tripping over my own shoelace," Lucy was saying. "Did they believe you?" Sophia asked, still smiling. "Not for a second. 11-year-olds have excellent radar for adult incompetence," Lucy replied cheerfully. "But they did create some amazing artwork inspired by what they called Ms. Reynolds' spectacular faceplant. Sometimes the best teaching happens by accident." Sophia noticed Daniel and nodded in acknowledgement. "Your date has been telling me about her teaching methods. Refreshingly unconventional." "Lucy specializes in the unconventional," Daniel agreed. "We were just discussing the auction items," Lucy explained. "I was telling Sophia that the experiential packages are far more interesting than the luxury goods." "Most people here would disagree," Sophia observed. That's because they're thinking about status value rather than memory value, Lucy said. A handbag gets mentally discounted the moment you acquire it, but a unique experience appreciates in your memory over time. Sophia looked at Lucy with new interest. That's a sophisticated perspective on diminishing returns. Lucy laughed. I just know that my students remember the day we painted with ice cubes better than anything I carefully planned from the curriculum. After Sophia excused herself to greet other guests, Daniel looked at Lucy curiously. You really aren't intimidated by anyone, are you? Should I be? Lucy asked, genuinely puzzled. Sophia seems lovely. Very perceptive. She manages billions of dollars and makes hardened financial analysts cry during meetings. Maybe they cry because they're trying too hard to impress her instead of just talking to her, Lucy suggested. People can sense when you're performing instead of connecting. The evening progressed, and Daniel watched with increasing admiration as Lucy moved through the crowd with effortless authenticity. She asked questions that others were too self-conscious to pose, expressed genuine delight when something pleased her, and showed no concern for strategic social positioning. When the live auction began, Lucy's enthusiasm became even more apparent. While others made calculated bids with restrained hand gestures, she bounced in her seat with excitement over items that caught her interest, regardless of their prestige value. Ooh, cooking lessons with that amazing chef from the sustainable restaurant, she exclaimed. Daniel, that would be such an adventure. Before he could respond, she had raised her hand to place a bid that was immediately outpaced by several others in the room. Lucy showed no disappointment, merely shrugging good-naturedly when the package eventually sold for an amount that would cover several months of her teacher's salary. Later, when a weekend package at a luxury ski resort came up, Lucy leaned over to whisper, "You should bid on that. You mentioned wanting to get back into skiing." "It will go for at least $20,000, Daniel murmured back. "But it's for charity," Lucy pointed out. "And experiences appreciate in memory value, remember?" To his own surprise, Daniel found himself raising his hand and entering the bidding. The competitive spirit of the room took over, and several minutes later, he was the somewhat stunned owner of a premium ski weekend that had indeed cost him just over $20,000. "That was unexpected," he admitted to Lucy as the auction moved on to the next item. "But you're smiling," she observed. "When was the last time you did something just because it would bring you joy?" Daniel couldn't immediately recall. His purchases were typically calculated for a combination of quality, longevity, and appropriate status signaling. The concept of buying something purely for the anticipation of pleasure was oddly novel. As the evening wound down, Daniel found himself viewing the familiar professional event through new eyes. The strategic networking, the careful status management, the measured expressions of enthusiasm. All the social behaviors he had once considered simply how things are done, now seemed unnecessarily constrained. "Did you enjoy yourself?" he asked Lucy as they waited for the valet to bring his car. "Immensely," she replied sincerely. "Though I think I scandalized some people by asking about their children before their job titles." Daniel laughed. "You definitely made an impression." "Good," Lucy said. "Life's too short to be forgettable." As they drove through the nighttime city, Daniel found himself wondering where Lucy's natural approach to life originated. Was it an innate quality or a conscious choice? And more disturbingly, How had he lost his own capacity for such unguarded engagement with the world? "You're thinking very loudly over there," Lucy observed, breaking his reverie. "Just processing the evening," Daniel replied. "You were a hit, you know. Sophia Renwick asked for your contact information. She wants me to speak to her foundation about arts education," Lucy explained. Apparently my experiential value perspective resonated with her. Daniel shook his head in amazement. "You networked more effectively by not trying to network than most people do with careful strategy." Lucy considered this. "Maybe because I was actually interested in the people rather than what they could do for me?" she suggested. "People can sense the difference." As he pulled up to her apartment building, Daniel realized with sudden clarity that his attraction to Lucy went beyond her refreshing approach to life. There was a wisdom in her apparent simplicity, a strength in her vulnerability that he found increasingly compelling. "Would you like to come up for tea?" Lucy asked, interrupting his thoughts. "I have an entire cabinet of varieties collected from around the world. Each one has a story attached." "I'd like that very much," Daniel replied, suddenly certain that whatever stories Lucy had to share would be far more interesting than returning to his empty, perfectly appointed apartment. Chapter 5. The Natural's Gift. Lucy's apartment was exactly as Daniel might have imagined it. A colorful, eclectic space filled with objects that clearly held personal meaning rather than decorative value. Student artwork covered one wall, while another featured a collection of musical instruments from various cultures. Bookshelves overflowed with volumes arranged by color rather than author or subject, creating a rainbow effect that somehow worked despite defying conventional design principles. "Welcome to my habitat," Lucy said, gesturing around with a smile. "It's organized according to my own peculiar logic, so feel free to ask if you can't find something." As Lucy busied herself in the kitchen preparing tea, Daniel examined the photographs displayed on a side table. Unlike the carefully curated images that typically adorned homes, these captured moments of genuine emotion. Lucy covered in mud with a group of laughing children. An elderly woman teaching her to knit. Lucy and a younger woman who shared her features making ridiculous faces at the camera. "That's my sister Emma," Lucy explained, returning with two mismatched but beautiful teacups. "She's the organized one in the family. Works in hospital administration and keeps detailed spreadsheets about her houseplants." "You seem close," Daniel observed. "We balance each other," Lucy agreed. "She helps me remember to pay my bills. I help her remember to dance in the rain occasionally." She handed him a cup filled with amber liquid. "Ceylon with a hint of bergamot. Not quite Earl Grey, but in the same family." As they settled onto Lucy's comfortable if slightly worn sofa, Daniel found himself asking the question that had been on his mind throughout the evening. "How do you do it, Lucy?" "Do what?" she asked, blowing gently on her tea. "Remain so genuine. Everyone adapts their behavior to social expectations. Everyone performs to some degree. But you seem to maintain the same authentic enthusiasm regardless of context." Lucy considered the question thoughtfully. "I'm not immune to social pressure," she said finally. "I've just found that the energy it takes to maintain a performance rarely yields results worth the effort." "But it's worked for you," Daniel pointed out. "People respond to your natural approach." "That's not why I do it," Lucy clarified. I'm enthusiastic about things because they genuinely interest me. I ask questions because I'm curious. I express delight because I feel it. She smiled. The fact that people respond positively is a happy side effect, not the goal. Was it always this way for you? Lucy shook her head. In high school, I tried desperately to be cool and sophisticated. I practiced facial expressions in the mirror and rehearsed casual remarks. It was exhausting, and I was terrible at it. She laughed at the memory. Then my grandmother got sick, and suddenly all that performance seemed pointless in the face of something real. What happened? Daniel asked gently. She recovered, thankfully. But during those weeks in the hospital, I saw how she connected with everyone. Doctors, nurses, other patients, through simple human authenticity. No pretense, no calculation, just genuine interest and appreciation. Lucy's eyes grew distant with the memory. She told me something I've never forgotten. Life is too short and too miraculous to experience it from behind a mask. Daniel absorbed this, recognizing the profound shift in perspective it represented. Most people would say some level of social masking is necessary for success. Maybe, Lucy acknowledged. But I think we overestimate how much performance is actually required versus what we've simply been conditioned to believe is necessary. She fixed him with a surprisingly perceptive gaze. Your authentic self is probably more compelling than the version you think you need to project. The observation hit uncomfortably close to home. Daniel had spent years carefully constructing his professional persona, believing it essential to his success. The possibility that this effort might be not only unnecessary but counterproductive was both liberating and threatening. The financial world has very specific expectations, he said, not entirely convinced. Does it? Lucy challenged gently. Or is that the story everyone tells to justify their conformity? She set down her teacup. Think about tonight. Who made the stronger impression? The dozens of people performing the expected role of successful financial professional, or the few who showed genuine personality? Daniel thought about Sophia Renwick, whose unfiltered assessments had made her legendary in their industry. About the founder of a major technology company who attended formal events in casual clothes because he valued comfort over convention. About his own mentor, whose folksy Midwestern expressions stood out in an industry of polished corporate speak. Point taken, he conceded. But those people earned the right to authenticity through exceptional success. Or perhaps they achieved exceptional success precisely because they didn't waste energy on unnecessary performance, Lucy suggested. Authenticity isn't just morally preferable. It's more efficient. As their conversation continued into the night, Daniel found himself sharing thoughts and experiences he rarely discussed. His original passion for economics as a tool for understanding human behavior rather than merely generating wealth. His private doubts about the value of his work. His gradual surrender of personal interests in service to professional advancement. Lucy listened without judgment, offering perspectives that were simultaneously idealistic and pragmatic. She didn't suggest he abandon his career or make dramatic life changes, but rather proposed small experiments in authenticity within his existing framework. Start with low-stakes situations, she suggested. Express a genuine opinion in a meeting. Ask a question you actually want answered rather than one designed to demonstrate your knowledge. See what happens. By the time Daniel left Lucy's apartment in the early hours of the morning, something had shifted in his understanding of both her and himself. What he had initially perceived as childlike naivety in Lucy, he now recognized as a deliberate, courageous choice to engage authentically with the world. A choice that required more self-awareness and confidence than his own careful performance. Over the following weeks, Daniel began cautiously implementing Lucy's suggestions. To his surprise, expressing genuine enthusiasm in meetings often energized discussions that would otherwise have remained formal and constrained. Asking authentic questions frequently led to more valuable information than his previous strategic inquiries. Small moments of unguarded reaction, a laugh not carefully modulated, an opinion not politically calculated, seemed to strengthen rather than damage his professional relationships. The most significant change, however, was internal. The constant mental calculation required for his social performance had consumed more energy than he'd realized. As he gradually allowed more authentic engagement, he found himself less exhausted and more present in his own life. Lucy, meanwhile, continued her natural way of being, seemingly unaware of the profound effect she was having not only on Daniel but on others in his formerly guarded world. When he brought her to a dinner with his closest colleagues, her unaffected enthusiasm for their work, not for its status or compensation, but for the actual intellectual challenges they navigated, created a rare evening of genuine connection among people accustomed to careful professional masks. "Your Lucy is extraordinary," his colleague Michael commented afterward. "I found myself explaining derivative structuring to her with more excitement than I've felt about it in years." "She's not my Lucy," Daniel corrected automatically, though the description stirred something unexpected within him. "Then you're missing an opportunity," Michael replied simply. The observation lingered with Daniel in the weeks that followed. Lucy had become central to his life, a counterbalance to the strategic calculation that had previously dominated his existence. Her natural enthusiasm had revealed possibilities for a more authentic life without requiring him to abandon his professional identity entirely. Yet he hesitated to define their relationship more explicitly, partly from fear of disrupting their comfortable dynamic, but increasingly from a deeper concern that Lucy's authentic nature required a response in kind that he wasn't certain he could provide. This uncertainty came to a head on a rainy Sunday afternoon in Lucy's classroom, where she had invited him to help prepare materials for an upcoming project. As they worked companionably cutting colored paper and organizing supplies, Lucy suddenly looked up from her task. "You've been quiet today," she observed. "Thinking about work?" "Thinking about authenticity, actually," Daniel admitted. "About whether it's truly possible to reclaim once you've spent years in performance mode." Lucy set down her scissors and gave him her full attention. That characteristic focus that made conversations with her feel so different from ordinary social exchanges. "I think authenticity isn't something fixed that you either have or have lost," she said thoughtfully. "It's a practice, a choice you make moment by moment. Sometimes you'll choose performance because the situation genuinely requires it. The key is awareness, knowing when you're performing versus when you're connecting from a place of genuine interest or emotion." What if you can't tell the difference anymore? Daniel asked. Lucy studied him with unexpected perception. Is this about us? The directness of the question caught him off guard. Partially, he acknowledged. You approach life with such natural authenticity. I'm less certain of my capacity for that. Daniel, Lucy said gently, I'm not some paragons of perpetual authenticity. I get nervous before parent conferences. I sometimes laugh at jokes I don't find funny. I occasionally pretend to be more knowledgeable about art history than I actually am. She smiled. The difference isn't that I never perform. It's that I try to make conscious choices about when performance serves a purpose worth its cost. She moved to sit beside him, her expression unusually serious. If you're worried about our relationship, please don't be. I'm drawn to your thoughtfulness, your subtle humor, your way of seeing connections between seemingly unrelated things. Those qualities aren't performance. They're genuinely you. How can you be so sure? Daniel asked. Because they emerge most strongly when you forget to maintain your professional facade, Lucy replied simply. When you're engaged in a topic that genuinely interests you, or when you're relaxed enough to drop the calculated responses, that's when I see the most compelling version of you. Her confidence in this observation was oddly reassuring. If Lucy, with her remarkable perception of authentic connection, saw something genuine in him worth responding to, perhaps it was there after all. I've spent so long calculating the optimal response in every situation that I sometimes wonder if there's anything left beneath the strategy, he confessed. Lucy reached out and took his hand. There is, she assured him. I see it. And if you're willing to take the risk of being occasionally unprepared, unpolished, or vulnerable, others will see it too. She smiled. Including you. In that moment, surrounded by children's art supplies in a classroom decorated with exuberant but technically imperfect paintings, Daniel made a decision. He leaned forward and kissed Lucy, not as a strategic step in relationship development, not with calculated technique, but simply as an expression of the genuine emotion he felt in that moment. When they separated, Lucy's smile contained the same natural delight she brought to everything that truly engaged her. It was a response no strategy could have elicited, no performance could have earned. I've been wanting to do that for weeks, Daniel admitted, but I kept analyzing the optimal timing instead of just doing it. Lucy laughed. Analysis has its place, but some things are better experienced than planned. She touched his face gently. Like this. In the months that followed, Daniel's relationship with Lucy became both an anchor and a laboratory for his exploration of more authentic living. With her encouragement, he began reclaiming aspects of himself that had been sacrificed to professional advancement. Spending a weekend sailing for the first time since college, reconnecting with friends from before his banking career, even taking up woodworking in a community studio where his professional status was irrelevant. His colleagues noticed the change, responding with reactions ranging from concern to curiosity to cautious emulation. When Daniel spoke in meetings from genuine conviction rather than strategic positioning, the quality of discussion often improved. When he acknowledged uncertainty instead of maintaining a facade of omniscience, others felt free to contribute valuable perspectives. Whatever she's doing to you, it's working, his manager commented after Daniel's uncharacteristically passionate presentation had secured an important client. "You're more effective when you actually care about the outcome beyond just the numbers." "Lucy would say I've always cared," Daniel replied. "I've just stopped hiding it behind professional distance." The most profound change, however, wasn't in his external success but in his internal experience. The constant vigilance required to maintain his strategic persona had created a background stress he'd never fully acknowledged. As he allowed more authentic engagement, he found himself more energized, more present, more capable of actual connection. One evening, 6 months into their relationship, Daniel took Lucy to dinner at the neighborhood Italian restaurant that had become their favorite. Unlike the exclusive establishments he'd once frequented to maintain his professional image, this family-owned place offered no status value. Just exceptional food served with genuine hospitality. "I have a confession to make," he said as they settled at their usual corner table. Lucy raised her eyebrows expectantly. "Sounds serious." "When we first met, I thought your approach to life was charming but somewhat naive," Daniel admitted. "I believed my strategic navigation of social contexts was more sophisticated, more adult." "And now?" Lucy asked, her expression curious rather than offended. "Now I think your way requires more courage and ultimately more wisdom," he said. "It's easier to hide behind calculation than to risk genuine engagement. Easier to perform the expected role than to reveal your authentic reactions and trust they have value." Lucy smiled. "The irony is that I never set out to adopt a philosophical approach to life. After spending my teenage years trying desperately to be what I thought would impress others, I just got tired. Maintaining a performance was exhausting me, and it wasn't even working particularly well." She shrugged. "Being myself was originally just the lazy option." Daniel laughed at this characteristically unpretentious assessment. "Well, your lazy option has been more transformative than years of strategic self-improvement efforts." As their dinner progressed, Daniel found himself observing Lucy with renewed appreciation. Her gift wasn't simply her natural enthusiasm. It was her courage in expressing that enthusiasm without the protective filters most adults developed. Where others carefully measured their reactions against social expectations, Lucy allowed herself to respond genuinely, creating a space where authentic connection became possible. "You've been studying me all evening," Lucy noted as they shared dessert. "Should I be concerned?" "I've been thinking about what makes your approach work," Daniel explained. "It's not just that you're naturally more enthusiastic or expressive than others. It's that you make it safe for people to be authentic in response." Lucy tilted her head curiously. "How so?" "You receive people's genuine expressions, even awkward or imperfect ones, with such obvious appreciation that it encourages more authenticity," Daniel elaborated. "With you, there's no social penalty for dropping the performance." "That's rare." "I never thought of it that way," Lucy admitted. "I just prefer real connections to polite ones." Later that night, as they walked through the neighborhood hand in hand, Daniel reflected on how profoundly Lucy's natural approach had affected not just him but everyone in her orbit. Her sixth-grade students, her artist friends, even the initially skeptical members of his professional circle, all responded to her authentic engagement by revealing more of their own genuine selves. "You create a kind of authenticity field around you," he observed. "People who might be guarded elsewhere become more real in your presence." Lucy laughed. An authenticity field? That makes me sound like a superhero. Maybe you are, Daniel suggested, only half joking. In a world where most people are trapped in careful performance, the ability to create spaces where genuine connection is possible might be the most valuable power of all. Lucy stopped walking and turned to face him, her expression suddenly serious. If I have any power, it's only the willingness to go first. To risk being enthusiastic when restraint is expected. To express genuine interest when strategic distance is the norm. To be occasionally foolish or messy or overly excited when others are maintaining careful composure. She squeezed his hand. Anyone can do that. Including you. Daniel considered this. Going first requires courage. Yes, Lucy acknowledged. But less than you might think. Most people are so relieved to encounter genuine engagement that they respond in kind rather than with judgment. As they resumed walking, Daniel realized that Lucy had identified something essential about human connection. The performances people maintained weren't just about impression management. They were about protection from vulnerability. By willingly embracing that vulnerability, by going first in authenticity, Lucy created opportunities for connection that strategic calculation could never achieve. In the year that followed, Daniel didn't abandon his career or reject all social convention. He still prepared carefully for important presentations, still observed professional protocols when appropriate. But alongside these necessary performances, he created space for more authentic engagement. Moments where his responses emerged from genuine interest rather than calculated effect. The result wasn't the professional and social disaster he might once have feared. Instead, he found that authentic engagement often led to more meaningful relationships, more innovative thinking, and more sustainable motivation than strategic performance ever had. The energy previously consumed by constant calculation could be redirected toward actual creativity and connection. Lucy, meanwhile, continued her natural approach to life, taking genuine delight in Daniel's gradual reclamation of his authentic self. She celebrated his professional successes but took greater pleasure in the small moments of unguarded enthusiasm or spontaneity that would once have been carefully suppressed. You laughed with your actual laugh in a client meeting today, she noted with satisfaction after joining him for a work dinner. Not your professional chuckle, but your real laugh. Progress. These observations, offered without judgment or pressure, helped Daniel recognize how much of himself he had previously kept in reserve, how many genuine responses had been filtered through the lens of strategic calculation. On the anniversary of their first meeting in Central Park, Daniel brought Lucy back to the same spot, spreading a picnic blanket near where she had been painting that day. She settled beside him with characteristic enthusiasm, immediately noticing details in the landscape that had changed since their last visit. The willow tree has grown at least 2 feet, she observed. And look, they've added those beautiful stone benches by the pond. As Lucy continued her delighted inventory of their surroundings, Daniel watched her with a profound sense of gratitude. Her natural approach to life, the genuine enthusiasm, the unfiltered appreciation, the courageous vulnerability, had revealed possibilities he might never have discovered on his own. Thank you, he said suddenly, interrupting her description of a particularly impressive cloud formation. Lucy turned to him, puzzled. For what? For showing me that authenticity isn't childish or naive. That it requires more courage and ultimately more wisdom than strategic performance. He took her hand. For creating a space where I could rediscover parts of myself I thought were gone. Lucy's smile held the unaffected warmth that had first drawn him to her. That's the wonderful thing about authentic connection, she said. It's never just one person affecting another. It's a space we create together, where both people can be more fully themselves. As the afternoon light filtered through the trees, casting golden patterns across their picnic blanket, Daniel recognized that Lucy's greatest gift wasn't her natural enthusiasm or her unfiltered appreciation of life's details. It was her fundamental trust that authentic engagement was worth the risk of occasional vulnerability, worth the possibility of social missteps or awkward moments. In a world increasingly dominated by strategic self-presentation, Lucy's natural approach wasn't simply refreshing. It was revolutionary. By choosing genuine connection over careful performance, she created ripples of authenticity that extended far beyond her immediate interactions. Daniel had once viewed this quality as charming but somewhat naive. Now he recognized it as perhaps the most sophisticated understanding of human connection possible. The recognition that beneath our carefully constructed performances, we all long for the freedom to respond genuinely, to engage authentically, to be received as we truly are. As Lucy leaned against his shoulder, pointing out a heron landing gracefully at the edge of the pond, Daniel silently renewed his commitment to the path she had helped him discover. Not a complete rejection of all social performance, that would be neither practical nor necessary, but a more conscious, intentional approach to when performance served a purpose worth its cost and when authentic engagement offered greater rewards. The natural's charm, he now understood, wasn't in never performing but in making the courageous choice, again and again, to prioritize genuine connection over strategic calculation. It was a choice available to anyone with the courage to go first, to risk enthusiasm when restraint was expected, to express genuine interest when strategic distance was the norm, to occasionally risk foolishness in pursuit of authentic engagement. Lucy had made that choice look effortless, but Daniel now recognized the quiet courage it required and the profound wisdom it reflected. In a world of careful performance, the willingness to engage genuinely was both the rarest and most valuable gift one person could offer another. Key vocabulary, repeated throughout. 1. Authentic/authenticity, being genuine rather than false or copied. True to one's own personality, spirit, or character. 2. Enthusiasm, intense and eager enjoyment, interest, or approval. 3. Vulnerability, the quality of being exposed to emotional harm. Openness to attack or damage. 4. Strategic, carefully designed or planned to serve a particular purpose or advantage. 5. Performance, the act of presenting a character or a series of actions for evaluation by others. 6. Genuine, actually having the claimed or apparent quality, sincere and honest. 7. Calculation, careful planning of actions for a future advantage. 8. Perception, the way in which something is regarded, understood, or interpreted. 9. Connection, a relationship in which a person or thing is linked or associated with something else. 10. Professional, relating to or belonging to a profession, conforming to the standards of a profession. 11. Facade, an outward appearance maintained to conceal a less pleasant reality. 12. Childlike, having good qualities associated with a child, such as innocence, frankness, or trust. 13. Sophistication, the quality of being refined, cultured, and well-versed in worldly matters. 14. Engagement, emotional involvement or commitment. 15. Restraint, the act of holding back or controlling impulses or emotions. 16. Navigate, to find one's way through a complex situation or social environment. 17. Perspective, a particular attitude toward or way of regarding something. 18. Unguarded, having one's normal defenses lowered, not being careful about what one says or reveals. 19. Expectation, a strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. 20. Transformation, a thorough or dramatic change in form or appearance. Thank you for joining us for The Natural's Charm, a story about Lucy Reynolds and how her authentic approach to life transformed Daniel's perspective on connection, vulnerability, and genuine engagement. In a world where strategic self-presentation often dominates our social interactions, this story reminds us that there's remarkable power in authenticity. Lucy's gift wasn't just her natural enthusiasm but her courage to engage genuinely with others, creating spaces where authentic connections could flourish. Like Daniel, we all struggle sometimes with balancing necessary social performance against genuine expression. Perhaps Lucy's approach offers us a valuable reminder that authenticity isn't about abandoning all social awareness, but about making conscious choices about when performance serves a purpose worth its cost and when genuine engagement offers greater rewards. Did this story resonate with you? Have you encountered someone like Lucy whose natural enthusiasm created space for more authentic interaction in your life? Or perhaps you recognize yourself in Daniel's careful navigation of professional and social expectations. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed The Natural's Charm and want to improve your English vocabulary while exploring meaningful human stories, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with friends who are also learning English. Don't forget to subscribe to Story-Driven English for more engaging stories that enhance your language skills while exploring fascinating aspects of human psychology and behavior. Hit that notification bell to never miss our new uploads of stories and news that make English learning both effective and meaningful. Remember, the best way to master a language is through stories that capture your imagination and teach vocabulary in context. Join our community of English learners today. See you in our next video, where we'll explore another fascinating character type that shapes our social world.